is 3:04. We'll start with roll call. City of Daly City. Town of Hillsborough.
Present.
City of Pacifica. City of San Bruno.
Present.
County of San Mateo.
Here.
We can start with public comment or request. Okay. Public comment is reserved for persons wishing to address the Finance Committee on any Emergency Services Council related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. There are no public comments online either.
Okay, thank you. We'll then move to take action to set the agenda and approve consent agenda items.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next, item number 4 is our budget presentation.
It's that time of the year.
Yes. We're bracing ourselves for a budget.
Keep going. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to present this year's budget. As you all know, the ESC JPA does many things, including coordination of services such as hazard material services, alert and warning. If there's an emergency, coordinating the response for the emergency and recovery as well. There has been some mitigation work. We don't know how that's going to happen given all the grant funding thing that's happening. So the financial landscape, it's a perfect storm right now with the feds cutting significantly. Mitigation funds, BRIC grants were recently cut that affected couple of cities here in San Mateo. We are going to get continuous of this cutting, and a lot of the programs that were supposed to happen at the federal level may be changing hands, maybe changing management, and we may not have all the products that we need to do the work that we need. At the same time, the state, the county, and each of the cities are also struggling. We know there's deficits in many of the cities and member agencies, and that's, I think, a really hard, it's hitting hard, especially with the vehicle licensing fees. That's also hitting the county, and it's hitting many of the cities. So it is a perfect storm, and with the volatility and uncertainty, we can't not do something, but we can't also just stay still in the way we are. So we've actually gone line by line. Krishna has gone with Michael Leach line by line on every single budget item. There is, I think, 14 or 20 pages to this document that basically bring this up. We've looked at everything that we could possibly cut, and we're right sizing everything. So given what I'm saying, you're gonna be surprised that our budget is actually going to end in a different note this year than we were supposed to end this way. So this year, the expected value of the trust fund. So there's two different things when I talk about the trust fund. There is a trust fund and there is also a reserve. In the trust fund, the expected value was going to be $570K. And then vehicle replacement fund for to replace any vehicles that we would need, including the hazardous material vehicle, was supposed to be $0.
So I'm assuming that you're going to do the presentation to the entire board. Can you define trust fund versus reserve?
Yep. So, the actual estimated, again, these are estimates because we are not finishing the year end, the estimated actual ending will be about 800K. And then the vehicle replacement fund, so we did some digging and found these funds in environmental health. They were being paid into a while back and then they was stopped, so given all of our digging, what we have found are some of these monies that were there, that is the JPA's vehicle replacement fund. Next slide. So estimated cost savings about 750K, which is more than we were expecting, given where we were. Next slide. We also looked at future needs, so we've talked to our service partners to see what the needs are gonna be in the upcoming 5 to 6 years. We need a fire apparatus to do our hazardous materials responses, and then an environmental health vehicle that goes, so that's the lab that goes with it that tests any compounds. So we're looking at needing 1.8 to 2.2 million dollars in the next 5 to 6 years. The hazardous material vehicle, I think, is about 50 years old now. I think it is about another 5 years to go. Chief Thorne will be talking about that tomorrow. He's gonna talk about the hazmat responses and specifically what the needs are. So
I'm sorry, are we on Zoom? Yes.
Yes.
Glenn hasn't chimed in, so I was just making
She
sure.
has, Lisa let me know that he did join.
Okay, thank you.
And these apparatus and vehicles will be, belongs to the ESC, the JPT, but then it will be maintained at the consolidated.
Correct. So given the current situation and the future needs, we then basically calculated what we needed to put some money aside for the future. And so we are proposing about 150K to put into a vehicle replacement fund or a sinking fund for the next 5 years. That will give us about 750K. We do have a trust fund that we can take from if we wanted to. We also have, there's a minimum on the trust fund of 500K that this committee, not this committee, but if the ESC decides they can waive that. But at the low end cost, we are expecting about a 430K shortfall even in 5 years, given the need versus what we're actually gonna save up. I'm gonna say this with a caveat, because right now grants are not looking too hot. Traditionally, we have gotten over some grant funding to get these types of thing, and the hope is usually when you get the grant, you have to spend it in that 1 year time or 2 year time, and you have to get the vehicle in that same year. So we would still be doing that when the time gets closer to us ordering that vehicle. And hopefully there will be some, policies at the federal level that will help us at the same time. If not, we're starting to engage with other foundations here regionally to demonstrate the work that we are doing, and hopefully that will help us infuse a one-time infusion of, because it's nice for someone to be like, we've supported the hazmat vehicle, right? That's a very nice, thing to do. So we're also creating those relationships now.
Maybe like hello, everyone. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Glenn Sylvester, please accept my apology. I'm here and I've been listening. Thank you so much. I'm very sorry.
Thank you for being here, Vice Mayor.
Okay.
City of Daly City is present then.
I was gonna say, maybe a biotech company might, be somebody that we have conversations with because
Yeah.
they're concerns that their work might generate the hazmat incident, right, or whatnot, so.
Yeah, so
Or
there,
some of the cities that have been impacted or had to utilize the hazmat vehicle in the past.
Yeah.
Reminding them of that the fact that it was available helped the city out. I know East Palo Alto benefited from that hazmat.
Or people like Bard or somebody, we did have an incident that was near the train in Bard. And we certainly have been supportive of them recently. So there may be some other agencies who might be supportive.
so we're not stuck with the landscape that we have right now, and we need to remember that these tides will, shift as well, in time. And we are also cultivating those relationships, whether it's private entities or nonprofits now, so we can, see if we can have a return on investment in the future.
Can I just ask, is there, what happens to the old vehicle? Is there value left of that and trying to sell it or,
I have no idea, but that's a great idea, to think through.
So, in general, I know the fire departments, when they deal with their apparatus, they will usually, they rarely sell it, because it's at the end of their lifetime. But they would donate it to, some Mexico, some cities in Mexico that may use those vehicles and still extended the life span of those apparatus. So I know of that. I'm not sure about the hazmat.
When you're saying it's 15 years, gonna be 20, so that's beyond what usually the vehicle is supposed to be. It's even for us, right, our own vehicles.
no, I know.
Usually we get new ones before that. So I've heard of auction grant and also donation. I forgot a donation that was made not too long ago. It needed to be clarified. I forgot what. Why did you want a fire truck?
No, but maybe one of these biotech companies would want one in their parking lot, right?
Great idea. So given that we have proposed a budget to include about 300K of the trust fund and reserves, basically the savings that we had this year, kind of put that back into next year budget, giving member agencies a little bit of a respite. So our budget is 4.7 million, 35% of it comes from the county, 35% from the cities. We are grateful to have grants right now. I will talk in the future, later in the presentation, that these grants could go away, and I will also talk about the programs that would go away with those grants. And about 9% of the revenue comes from SFO. This has been a consistent, around the similar amount. It is not an allocation, it is actually a revenue. It's based on service fees that we charge us.
Yeah, it's also because we're not sure when they're gonna stop it. They
Yeah.
never made a long commitments for the relationship with us, shall we say? But I do think out of the biotech companies or the cities, because the cities already pay into the hazmat, it's more the SFO, BART. Top of it, there are finance situations, but they should support these, because of the very reasons why, they have those incidents where they need mutual aids more so than, others.
Yeah.
So.
It's, we can go to the next slide. So how is the 1.7 million that the cities are paying into, how is that allocated? So 62% of that is environmental health and hazmat services. 24% of that is operational area communication channels, communication, and then 12% of that is EM management admin fees, and 2% is services and supplies. So the cities really don't pay for a lot from a services supplies standpoint or like a personnel, DEM personnel standpoint, that really comes out of the county, 50%. I want to point out something very specific here. The 24% of operational area communication is about 400K. This was about 3 years ago removed from the budget. However, it was not removed from the JPA. We were still getting invoiced and the JPA was still paying into it, but we didn't see the effects of it because there were vacancies. And now that we don't have vacancies, we're seeing the effects of it. This was erroneously removed, and so we have put this back in into the budget. This is for TAC channels, radio channels for mutual aid communication. This is microwave phone lines that come from each of the cities into this building for an emergency. Including hospitals. So this would be our communication if, everything failed, for example, if radios failed, if Wi-Fi and internet failed, if cellular communication failed, we have actual direct plain old copper lines coming. And the servicing of that is quite expensive.
That was in the budget for the previous 25 years, and then, like we say, kind of erroneously, we took it out. Now it's going backwards, natural.
This is also including the cell towers or the towers that we we either lease or we have MOU with Skylon.
So it only includes one tower. But it basically, I have a list of every single, and I'm happy to share this with you all, but it has a list of every single line that goes from each of the cities and each of the police departments. Police departments also use all the radio channels. So it is only one site that we're paying that's out of the JPA. Next slide. So if you look at the overall JPA expenses, it's about 23% service charges, 26% salary and benefits, and 50% programs and contracts. Majority of the programs and contracts really are, the hazardous material contract, and then some of the other littler contracts like community outreach. The service charges are, we've included the sinking charge in there of the 150K, the 400 for the radio and operational communication channels, and then the facilities charge and the county charge. Just to contrast that, if you break it down with just basic service charges, it's about 115K with like ISD, phone service, postage, mailing, and then on only the DEM side of the house, we pay about 300. Next slide. So I want to give a huge shout out to our Daly City Council member here for pointing us to the local hazard mitigation grant. This grant funding is pretty certain right now, but the numbers may change a little bit. And we would not have gotten this grant if our Daly City representative didn't push us towards it. So thank you for that. Glenn, are you there? So our
Yes,
grant
I'm here.
program.
I muted myself so I didn't disturb anyone. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much for bringing in about 400K into 475K into our JPA funds. I appreciate it.
Well, doctor, I thank you so much for going forward and looking into it. I can lead you to the water, but I can't make you drink, and you drank.
I will always drink.
Okay. All right.
So we have local hazard mitigation grant that we're doing with each of the cities and the county, the local hazard mitigation planning. This is something that we're required to update every 5 years. We don't know if the requirements will change or will go away. And then emergency management plans, programs, community outreach, and training and exercise. So bringing in about 700K in grants, with the city's share being 189 and the county's share being about 189K. It is very possible that these grants may go away. Along that, the programs may also go away.
Is there a chance the local hazard mitigation plan grant would go away?
It's very possible. At this point in time, everything is possible.
And what does that mean then? Is that work required to happen?
So
we'd still
we'll have to make some tough decisions. I'm anticipating that this committee is gonna meet more frequently than expected, given the challenges that we're facing. We don't know, and I can't give you a certain answer.
Okay.
Next slide. My proposal to all of you from a budget recommendation is that we adopt the $4.7 million budget, bringing in about 100K from the reserves and 200K from the trust fund. And this, unfortunately, with the grants portion, it may also change, and so we'll have to readdress if things change.
Judy, what's the policy on the reserve money versus the trust fund? Are we required to keep a certain amount in an account? Is there a policy to allow it to grow so that it continue to have it?
I don't know the percentage off the top, if it's the same standard percentage that I think most JPAs have. Do you guys know?
It was 2% before.
Yeah.
I think going into next fiscal year, it's gonna be 4%.
4%.
Reserve maintenance.
Yeah, and then
Trust fund is 500K.
yeah, the trust fund, we established, maybe you were probably on the board, like a couple of years ago, some parameters around what we would target with trust fund, which was 500,000 at the low, and we would never let it go over $1.5 million. We would, use it on programs before we went over that.
That'd be helpful. I mean, yeah, we've been following reserves on different boards as well, and how we're managing those, or the rules around them, so that we keep a certain dollar amount available.
So is your trust fund mainly utilized to fund different programs, or is it to keep the operations going? Should we have a sort of a trouble with maintaining our operation? Which part of it is that?
So I think in the past, we've used both trust fund and reserves to plug holes. And we've also used trust fund for special projects, right? Like, for example, Chris for all hazard evacuation planning, also like the vehicles we purchased. So we had like almost 100K savings on the vehicles because we purchased vehicles that were not as flamboyant. So the idea is that the trust fund is really for you all to decide what to use it for, because ultimately you as the ESC are the decision maker. Given the operational cost changing and exceeding in this fiscal year, the reason we're proposing the reserves plus the trust fund is that we don't want to empty it out of the trust funds completely. We want to kind of keep our economic financial profile so that's basically how it goes. If we get more monies from SFO, let's say bunch of things happened and this quarter, we got more monies that actually goes back into our reserves.
Well, just for the long haul, I think that we should continue to have conversation with SFO. I don't think that what they're paying is,
Yeah.
I won't even call it a minimum. I think that we're glad that we now have a relationship. They recognize the benefits and then they're willing to pay. But because they're not committed for a long haul, we can't really put it in, so we,
Yeah.
sort of put it into the general and to see, year from year what the operation is going to be. And knowing that SFO could walk away, but if SFO is expanding and they do intend to live like a city or operate like a city, they should really think about their expense realistically.
I think they almost consider themselves a city unto themselves, which I can understand, because in emergencies, they won't send apparatus out. They will not. I believe, my memory's correct, I think in the 210 pipeline explosion, they sent a fire truck, one. And that was because we thought it was a jet, and that was more for the foam, but that wouldn't have, but anyway. So they don't, and I think it took a long time for us to get them as, to be good partners and good neighbors, because we know darn well, they have to evacuate the airport is going to go into all of our cities or towns. That's one. And then two, I know when they had the airlines incident, right at the runway, San Bruno was the first and then it precipitated to the other. And so, I mean, even with the sheriff, San Francisco sheriff, or it's not the San Bruno jail, but it's San Francisco jail. I mean, we get some compensation because we go up there for medical emergencies first out. So I think that is something we really should.
I do think so, and I also think that, now that they have a new director, it's more important than not that we build a relationship
Yes.
with them, help them recognize the importance
Yeah.
of our services. Not necessarily to get their money upfront, but but to make a strong advocacy as to why the relationship is important, the collaboration is important.
I do think that we're pulling up the agreement right now. I think it's 26.
2022, 2026, 6 years.
26, yeah. So that's coming up. The other big contract that's coming to an end will be the hazmat contract as well. So these are some big contracts that are coming to end that we'll have to go through the procurement process. And I think I would love your help in advocating for the JPA and making this a better agreement.
And then for future, is there escalation clause? Like every year, does it go up 3%, 4%, or does it just stay flat consistently?
It's based on services provided, exactly. So it's real, like CAD, real calls, CAD notifications. So there's some percentage of
Each quarter we get it from public safety commissions.
probably
How many
something
calls?
this much.
Right.
I mean, you mentioned that trying to minimize the extra cost to cities, but it is still a big dump, right?
Yeah, it's
We're asking and
Yes.
how this works is that anything that any of the cities would ever complain about or?
I'm not sure. So we definitely have to share it with the cities. And I think in sharing, we definitely have to show that we're putting money in to offset the cost so that the burden isn't as great, but everybody's struggling right now, so.
So
That's consistent.
yeah, I think that there is something to be said about the JPA and the importance of it. And I also think that each city does not consider hazmat as the big services that they receive from the JPA, albeit is critical. And also the communication in terms of self-services, as we know that it plays a very big part of it. I think the difficulty is there's a formula in terms of the membership that we're paying in. And then there's a certain sort of comfort levels that we kind of go, well, we pay into the JPA. We're a part of the team. The team will take care of us, not knowing that it also covers personnel. I think that that is important to note it. And then the fact that because it covers the program and personnel, the fee will go up. That is going to impact our membership. And what's happening in the last 10 years is that because this accounting resides in sheriff's accounting, it's hard. I applaud the team for clogging it out and getting the line items is not a small task at all. I totally appreciate this. The fact that we can say that the budget is 4.7 million, because for a long time we were operating at 3 mil. We think that, this is what the JPA runs on. So the 4.7 and you have itemized it is important. And that helped us to talk about the trust funds. It helped us to talk about the reserves. We don't necessarily have the other agency like the cities that without the reserve, we're not going to live. I think that there's a way that we can compensate it. But I do think that the trust fund help us to continue with some of the programs. Like the replacement of the vehicles, they're expensive items. And the fact that we're now talking about it, it makes it very difficult. So I think that needs to be articulated to the board. We have a lot of new board members. They need to bring that information back to their cities. So that if times that we have to come and say, we need to up a membership a little, they know what's coming, even though everyone is expecting a downfall in terms of their budget, it's going to be difficult. At least, sort of pace ourselves to go forward.
Yeah, and even when you think about the vehicles themselves, we're anticipating that the cost is gonna be 740,000, right?
About 1.8 million to 2.
But it could be even higher if we're
Yeah.
going through the same uncertainty right now. We just don't know.
Yeah.
What's gonna happen. So it's managing and following that and staying on top of that work as well.
I think what we have now is a clear outline of where we need to be in 5 years from a fiscal standpoint. And then we also have an understanding of like where our structural deficits or issues were that we have now corrected. I think this budget is 95% there from like what it costs to run the ESC JPA. There may be other surprises, but God willing.
So we'll be voting on this tomorrow as a,
Yeah, and then I will, once the vote is done, I will be, because I'm not only asking for the adoption of this budget, but I am also asking to pull 300K out of reserves and trust fund.
how have the conversations gone with the cities? Cities know that this is gonna increase significantly. And have we received any pushback from any cities?
We haven't had conversations with all cities, but we've had conversations about, I think, I would say more than 1/3, less than.
But it also was fluctuating. So I went to the finance CFO and said, expect it to be bad. I've got dispatch subcommittee and I've got this, and so it's not becoming as to what we might have.
Yeah.
Smart. Go bad, go bad, and then
That's true.
correct the other way.
It's like the Uber drivers. It tells you that it's going to be 15 minutes to get to where your restaurants. And then they showed up at 12 and you're like, oh, that's Uber service is great.
5-star.
I know, 5-star.
It's a 5-star budget.
Yeah. I do think a couple of things. One is that you mentioned that the hazmat contract is up for discussions. And I'll say that in our experience, and you can come, and Glenn is on the Zoom, is that in general, it's always a shocking discussions.
Yes.
Like we are like, what is going to be, how much, how can we go back to our cities? So I do think that In terms of the hazmat discussions, is there going to be sort of anticipating as to the personnel costs and then the vehicle alignments and all this, where are we going to be at what we're talking about? Not that we're setting numbers because it's negotiation, but so that we were anticipating that to be a big subject that is going to impact our finance, our budget.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing because I don't know the procurement processes, but it's a contract, so I don't know if we do a RFP and go through that. So I think what we'll need to do is over the next year, in 25, 26, I think this committee will have to meet and guide us, and especially on these two big things. There's other smaller contracts that we're looking at, like Genesis, alert warning. You know, we need to think about, we can't have all these different platforms. We need to have one platform. What does that look like for us? We can stabilize for now, but maybe we think about consolidating some of these different things. So I am wanting feedback and guidance from this committee on that. And helping navigate those waters.
And I know you said there has been an onboarding because it was mentioned we have newer members. And so sometimes that happens. Sometimes you have ones that have been around sometime.
You're looking at me smiling, I hope.
Well, I've been on longer, so,
Of course.
but yes, I gotta have some friends that remain with me. But I think, I was thinking back to the last meeting where we had one of our board members who said, in a disaster, do you come to the city, open the door, take care of City Hall? And I was thinking, I just wanna make sure expectations are set within the budget. And to the hazmat, it is always a sticker shock. The costs of the personnel and the vehicle and the program, which really, if you think about it, is county-wide. So when you think about the resource that's offered for as much territory as we have, it's not a lot, candidly. But I just wanna make sure as we go through this, that expectations are kind of set, and it's just because the folks are new and maybe they just don't have the example of what this money goes for to, right? That's all.
Yeah, so, through the chair, I do think that, I know you have a small MIT team, but I do think that reach out to the city managers of each city, try to get on the agenda to at least have a 10 minutes presentation, get in front of the council in each city. It is really hard for the council representatives, the board members, to bring back the key info that you want to, highlight. I think it's worth a while, your time, to get onto the agenda, to just kind of put the narrative out there. So that people, one, familiar that there is such an agency, two, understand the difference between ESC and the DVM. For the last 6 months, I've been explaining that to people because they were trying to differentiate that. And the DEM is not here to take over, but the ESC is important because the JPA is effective. So that needs to be articulated. So that when comes time for discussion on the money part, the commitments, the cities will feel the value. At least the council members would have a better understanding of that.
I don't even know what you can do. Nowadays, a lot of mosquito abatement is done via Zoom. Because obviously to try to get to everybody is daunting. And to be in person is what I mean by that. There was something good about Zoom.
No, I would beg the difference in person.
Well, I think that's ideal, but to try to get to 20
It's right now.
in a short time is hard for the team.
I know. So you kind of have to pace yourself and what, I'm not saying that there's an urgency to it. But in person, because there's not a whole lot of people in the chambers now. And you do want to build that relationship with the board members and the city councils, right? Because I think it does make sense, because the board members' assignment is depending on the mayors. And so while we can argue that we would like the board members to stay on because the experience and knowledge that we share is very helpful. But I do think that, you know, there will be expectation that, the new board members would come on, they would have no, context to reference to.
Are you thinking that this needs to happen like before cities process their current year budget work?
It's too late for that.
It's too late.
Yeah, but I do think that, that might be something that you want to approach the city managers or, you know, to get onto their agenda for a
As we're-
presentation.
As we're looking for the next
Yes.
year, especially with the two big contracts, I
Yes.
think that's what I got. That's what I
Yes.
heard from you. So
And
that
I
there's
think
not, because there will be some sticker shock with that hazmat contract, fully expected.
And how can we be helpful? You have a committee here and we're gonna have the conversation. Perhaps there are comments that we can make that will help the rest of the board understand. So let us know how we can be helpful tomorrow.
I think, you know, one of the things is the fact that there is a difference, right? And it is, in some cities, it's 20-ish%. There are some cities that went down because of tax roll data, so there's ones that are like 9%. It's 9% increase, but it's tax roll data and it's also the census data. So those things weren't really being updated. And we've updated that. So you're seeing, it's a multifactorial jump. The jump is not just that we have negotiated, you know, SEI contracts that give 5%. We also have, you know, the operational communication. We also have the tax roll data and the census data that's gone up. So multifactorial reasons for the change. And I think, you know, how important is the ESC is the question. Us being together, you know, we're a very unique entity. There's only two in the state of California. Santa Barbara is the other entity. If in this day and age, given the pressures on local government, all disasters are gonna be local. It's gonna be up to us. No one's coming to help. Maybe the state. But no one's coming to help.
It'll take them a while though.
Trudy does a good job in her budget meetings with the county, of articulating that each dollar that you push towards emergency preparedness and response, you know, brings $6 to $13 about.
Right,
So-
I remember that line. That was
Yeah.
the line.
And that's kind of impactful. You wanna right size it and you don't wanna be cutting something that has that return on investment. 1,500.
I also think that, you know, the wireless, you know, in terms of communication, the systems that all the police departments are utilizing it. As we know, the number of incidents, the scale and the fluency of it, you know, it just, you have to be so quick on, you know, organizing and getting it, you know, so the fact that we have reliable communication is so critical. And it is nice to resize in a center, in this case, I think it's the DVM, then the ESC, to have that collective group, right, you know, the regional benefits. I think that is critical. I also want to comment on, you know, the fact that we have all this SMC alert and Genesis relying on the third party is troubling. Because, you know, whenever, I mean, that whole discussion about the Evan Bridge and the rave and which one has a better service, and then inevitably when you have transferred the service, you drop some of the, subscribers, that we need to go out to our public to say, hey, it's like, so I and my city have come up with this tagline that, daylight saving, you need to check on your SMC alert, because if you get dropped, because we didn't know, I mean, the public didn't understand that there's a third party mandating this. So there are two concerns. One is that when you do the transfer, the public may get dropped because it doesn't go through, and they didn't know that. They think that once they signed up, that should be it. So it's, it's putting the ownership on the subscriber to say they need to do that. And also the other part is to also have, the concern about the third parties maintaining their proprietary, information and softwares and whatnot. That is of concerns, because in essence, the cities and the counties are advertising and endorsing SMC alert. So for the public, they believe that that is the method to get the public information or the alerts. But the back end of it is that the third parties is maintaining the structures, and that I'm concerned about. So.
How are you feeling?
Good. I think we have a path forward, and I'm, whatever comes our way, we'll be ready.
I think we just have to remind people why we came together, why we're here, and there have been disasters in our
Yeah.
in our state, and we're prepared. We're trying to make sure that we're prepared for whatever comes our way.
And, and just our community outreach group has done so much work in the last few months. We've reached more than, just in the last quarter, we've reached more than 900 people, like actually prepared. There are 900 people more prepared than they were before. And then our SMC alert signups have gone up significantly, 17%, which is not heard of in the world of emergency management. It's usually like goes up by 5%. So the fact that we're doing outreach, it shows up in the SMC alert sign up. So those are direct.
And that helps all of our cities, so that's
Yeah.
another good thing to communicate. right?
Yeah.
More people locally ready
Yeah.
to respond and to take care of themselves. Can I ask one question? I was at a conference from Civic Well last month. And one of the things that I'm hearing we just cut on the federal level is actually training for emergency services personnel. I didn't realize that there's an institute, on the East Coast somewhere that everybody goes to, and so
There's quite a few institutes, pretty much many of them, if not all of them, have been cut, like completely gone. So we used to be able to bring those trainings in before, sometimes for free, a lot of times for free. Now we are not able to do that. So we have to go through a contractor that provides similar services, which is why it's in the budget this year. But that local training, a lot of that money is being cut.
so that's an important thing, to tie into, right? Because of the federal cuts, we're having to do more. This is part of why our budget is increasing.
And that's what we're seeing typically is that when the federal government pulls back, state might step in. Typically, the state's gonna pull back too and shoot down to the county. And so we have to be prepared to step into the breach where federal government has already pulled back. We're not sure what level of support we're gonna get from the state. So.
Well, the irony is that if you look at the budget, consider what the cities are paying to, it's bang for the bucks. I mean, really is. So I think that needs to be recognized, and in that umbrella, perhaps we can articulate some of the benefits why collectively we as a group that we can get benefits from this, whereas individual cities would not. I know that either last year or the year before, we had discussions regarding the hazmat. And, there was discussions about how does how does it look if if each department, you know, fire department or fire district contribute personnel to get into the hazmat group, you know, in essence alleviate some of the expense because the, you know, the cities are sending personnel. But that is not, as an operation, it doesn't work that way. You know, that's not how they respond to the incidents. So, you know, the benefit that it resides in, you know, San Mateo Consolidated and why it's important to continue to keep up with the trainings in particulars are all critical elements of why we as small cities or individual cities cannot do.
Well, I want to thank everyone. I know, I want to go back to Glenn, who's on.
We do, oh, okay. We do have to check for public comment when.
I just wanted to see if Glenn had any comments. It's kind of difficult when you're on Zoom and not in the room. Seeing none, should we go to a public comment?
There are no public comments.
The next item would be report out of, report outs related to Emergency Services Council, or their report, any report outs. The easy.
Yeah.
Seeing none, we move to the consent items. Looking, do we have to, how do we have the consent items in this,
You already approved.
that they're already approved? All right. So if that's the case, this meeting is now adjourned. It's, we have 5 minutes to spare.
Yay, we love it.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn.